Hello and welcome to Almost 30 Podcast.
Hi, everybody. It's Lindsay and Krista. What's happening?
What are you doing?
Giggle squads.
Giggle squads over here. Giggly Squad, love them.
Love them.
Truly.
We should have them on.
Podcast icons.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Every time they have a clip, I'm like, damn, I want to talk about that.
I know.
I'm like, I think
podcasting.
it is like the whole thing of like, you think that too?
That's why everyone's talking about the same thing. You're like, everyone does that.
Yeah.
The web.
Yes. That's why I can't watch stuff. It's on my feed, but I can't watch it because then I'm like, oh, fuck.
I know.
I want to do that or, yeah, you just get too tempted.
Completely. Well, then you're not being creative.
Then you're not being yourself.
Welcome to the show. If you're new to Almost 30, hello, welcome. I'm so glad you found us. We started this thing about 8 years ago when we were going through our wild transition from our 20s to our 30s, and these conversations were just healing to us. We were new friends at the time. Now we're best friends. We're sages.
We're sages.
And
We're soulmates.
we're soulmates in many lifetimes, but we're happy you're here. We hope to support you in your relationships, your career, your inner work, and anything in between.
And I'm excited about the conversation today on the neuroscience of manifestation and how it changes everything with James Doty that Lindsay did in New York. Because I feel like I've been kind of getting back into my manifestation or my process. I feel like I was in and out for a little bit. And I wanted to just kind of let God do his thing. But right now, what I've been doing that I really love is I recorded a Dream Life audio. Where it's like 5 minutes that I did. I was driving on the way home from Topanga from this party that I was at, and I recorded my whole entire life as if I was living it. So I'm living in a luxurious home that's beautifully decorated, that's on the water, that's all these things. My partner wakes me up. He's doing these things. I'm doing this. This is my whole life. The detail, honey.
Yeah, yes.
The detail
is very, very important.
But also from a human design perspective, you could be a non-specific or a specific. I'm a non-specific, but I do like to get into the details because I think that's a part of expanding the vision that's really important.
Yeah.
My friend Alyssa Nobriga, I remember one time we were hiking and she's like, tell me your vision. We were like at the top of a mountain. It was so iconic. And I told her my vision and she's like, can I expand it? And was just asking these really poignant questions about how to expand it. She's like, okay, how does it feel, when you wake up in the morning? Or like when you're having breakfast, what are you guys talking about? What kind of outfit are you wearing to bed? Like, what does your what's on your desk? Who are you working with when you're working with someone? Just really making everything super specific and helping you really step into and visualize this life. So back to the Dream Life audio. So I recorded it. I just have it on my voice notes and I'll listen to it like every day. And it's just beautiful to hear your own vocal vibration emanating out what you want and hearing it back to yourself.
Yeah, and you can also feel like the truth in what you're saying. 'Cause sometimes we can like convince ourselves that whatever we're dreaming of is like too much or too specific, or we're like, well, we might not get that, and is that going to be okay, and how am I going to feel about that? And so to hear the truth in your voice, I think, is so powerful. And also noticing like where it's not true. Like
100%.
Sometimes I'll like record something and I'm like, that wasn't true.
Oh my gosh.
Whether it's like on a selfie video or whatever, I'm like, huh. And I totally noticed whether it's in my body language, my face, my tone of voice.
Yes. I even it's interesting you said that because in the audio that I did, the Dream Life audio, at the beginning, I say Krista of the future. And then there's a part where I switch and I say I am.
Interesting.
And it's so funny because the part of the future is the parts that I don't have. And then the I am parts are things I'm already doing, just kind of bigger. But like, it's like the Krista of the future is living in this beautiful home. And then the Krista of the future is in this relationship, which are things that I don't have in this moment. And then the I am is like Krista speaking on stages all over the world and kind of like going on these things, which I do.
Yes.
Obviously my vision is expanded, but yeah, I noticed that even in myself. I was like, wow, I need to actually re-record it and re-record it as the I am. Because I think that's really important with this is having the I am statements in it, so you're like definitively claiming it.
Well, because it already is, I guess.
Yeah.
In like some respects. And like Krista of the future sounds so far
100%.
when you say it. I'm like, how long though?
It's funny too because I was really like laying it on thick.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know how you have like a voice? Because we have a podcast, you can kind of tune into voices. So I was like, I was like, the Krista of the future is, and I was really milking it and working it because I knew I was going to hear myself.
Hi, baby.
No, I was like, hello, darling sister.
Oh, sorry, my husband just walked in.
Yeah, I was like, oh, they caught me sleeping.
That's a powerful practice, though. I feel like using voice notes.
Yeah, it's
I've done it in
free.
other ways, where it's like whether I'll vent on voice notes just to
Oh
get
my
it out and
God.
never like have to kind of visit that again. I'll practice having a hard conversation on voice notes.
Oh my God, I'll do that too.
And then I'll never listen to it
Oh my
because
God.
I'm like,
All my dating guys, I'm like, hey, I just wanted to talk to you about something. Like, I'll do
you're
it on
like,
my voice
all right,
note.
let's practice leaving a voicemail.
You know, honestly, I practice like the first voice note to them, I'm like, haha, so, and just like get flirty.
Like,
I'm
hey, Dave.
No, but it's funny. I mean, if you guys ever heard my voice notes, God, that should be a whole episode. Psychotic. Because it's like pre-divorce. I'm like, I mean, your girl was like, I was,
Sorry, where are the voice notes on your memo or sending to people?
no, like to myself, like I am feeling like
Yeah.
it's like a suicide letter. Also, I have stuff that we have. Like, I have
Oh, wow.
your voice notes. I have your birthday things. Like,
Wow.
so years ago on the podcast, you guys, Lindsay and I both would go hard in the paint for birthdays. Like,
Hard.
it was like,
Now we're like, happy
they were
birthday,
like
bitch.
literally quinceañeras. Like, we just were like, it was like we were some type of YouTubers being
Our
like,
team was like, hey,
They're
we
like,
actually have to
hey.
do real work. Like, why are
Yes.
you having us do a major
I would do
project?
full episodes for Lindsay's birthday, have every single person she's ever known say happy birthday.
Beautiful episode. You can listen to it.
Oh my God, it was beautiful. And then, so I have on these like, let's see what this is. Funny saying.
I'm a fish. I need water, dude.
That is who knows. Tons from New York. Who knows what those are from? I have some psychic readings on my voice notes.
Uh-huh.
Psychic readings from like 2016.
Yeah. I just have songs.
That you have. Oh my God, I've heard your songs. You have songs that you've recorded
I'm
and
gonna
sung.
play them, but I'm like, do I have anything other than songs?
I've debated, so this is my debate, and I'm curious what everyone thinks. Do you keep and hold on to those voice notes and the notes in your notes app that are representative of past relationships and past situations, or do you delete them?
Yeah, because the energy is still kind of
Yes.
there.
But there's a part of me that like really enjoys, like I was looking at my voice notes of like when I was in London and then there's this guy and I was like looking at these long voice notes of me processing this thing. And I was just like, oh my God, it's fascinating to tune into someone that like felt this.
Mm.
But honestly, I mean, I see a bunch of Instagram caption drafts that were
yeah.
hilarious.
Uh-huh. I just checked if my ex, like my ex was still on my phone, and he is, and that feels weird. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, that's an energy.
That's actually a good one. I don't know if mine is.
I should delete
which-
those.
Which,
Just in
like the
case.
college one or something.
Just in case. But anyway, this conversation with James Doty is a really fun one. His story is wild. At a high level, he grew up in poverty. His mother dealt with mental health issues, as well as I believe she was an alcoholic. Basically, parental figures. It was really, really dysfunctional. And he found his way one day when he was escaping. He was like riding his bike just as far as he can go. He stumbled upon a strip mall and walked into this magic shop. There was this woman that was working there. Her son owned the magic shop. She was just kind of like manning the register while he was away. And basically, she became a teacher for him. And she shared 6 steps to manifestation based on what he told her about his life at the time. He wrote Into the Magic Shop, which was his first book, which is actually being optioned, I believe, as a movie. But he then later became a neuroscientist. So this experience as a young boy, and then coupled with his experience knowing the brain on a scientific level, eventually converged later in his life when he lost tens of millions of dollars. He explains this whole story in the podcast, but he has come around to understanding manifestation in a really interesting way and a hybrid of neuroscience and the spiritual. So I loved this conversation, and he gives very tactical steps and also calls us into a deeper understanding of what we're bringing to each moment when we want to manifest, because it's subtle in the ways that it can shift your manifestations, it can block your manifestations.
Wow. I was kind of just going through the book a little bit when you were talking, and just kind of reading, and I love his perspective too. He says, "Thus I see manifesting as, at its heart, a practice of well-being, engagement with the world, and living a good life. By practicing it, we cultivate dispositional optimism, defined as a generalized tendency to expect good outcomes across important life domains. Research has shown a staggering number of health benefits associated with dispositional optimism, from improvements in cardiovascular health to how quickly wounds heal to slower disease progression. Where some people may believe that the only measure of a successful manifestation is the material results it delivers, I consider this view to be misguided. The true gift of visualizing our intentions again and again is to go through life with a buoyant sense that things will work out for us, which liberates us to be both responsive and resilient no matter what our external circumstances bring." I love that.
Yeah, there's just a sense
Dispositional,
of
reading that a few times in public was a little bit challenging. Each time I was like, here we go, dispositional.
there's this element of just being okay,
Yeah.
whether you get the manifestation you want,
Yes.
or the manifestation you need,
Yes. Yeah. That's
because
the whole
it's
thing.
probably different.
I think that's where I kind of fell off the train a little bit, was just kind of finding the balance between material manifestation and like allowing the mystery of life to lead me and guide me, and just really being present for whatever God's plan for me is, and not being so caught up in like placing my proverbial order with the celestial butler that is God.
Say that again.
Bitch, that's my.
She's
listen
like, I
up.
cannot.
And I knew that was going to hit hard, because like when I said that, I was like, that's sick. I'm not interested in placing my proverbial order with the celestial butler that is God. I'm interested in what God has for me, baby, if it involves lots of money. But if not, I'm pissed.
But what he says, and what we've talked about on the podcast before, your intention is so important.
Yeah.
And your intention must be, ideally, bigger than just the pleasures of the material.
Yeah.
In terms of, how does this impact other people? How does this really bring goodness to the world on a larger scale than just your own individual pleasure? And he gives really great examples of that from his own life. But I think when we go into a manifestation, we're thinking about what it can relieve us of the pain, relieve us of the suffering, relieve us of just feeling less than. And it's like, let's check our intent. You have to check the intention, because even just saying that, I'm like, ugh, so heavy.
Yeah. That's
so
the whole thing.
heavy. And it's so much pressure on the thing to be the thing, and it's not really the thing.
Yeah.
You know.
It's like, what do we think this is going to mean about us? What do we think this is going to give us? So if we are like, I want a home, that's going to give us safety, security.
Yeah.
It's also going to give us status. It's also going to give us, all these things that you can also cultivate in other places.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing too, is finding the feeling behind your desire and then cultivating that in other areas. So that's what I do with my female relationships. I like cultivate this feeling, the feelings that I want in my romantic relationship with them as much as I can. And then it's like, if I'm already in the vibration of that feeling, of feeling loved, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling expanded, feeling abundant, whatever the feelings are, then I'm already in the vibration. So it's going to be easier to have a match
Yes.
at that level.
Yes. Yeah. Profound. So the new book from Dr. James Doty is Mind Magic, The Neuroscience of Manifestation and How It Changes Everything. His first book, Into the Magic Shop, is also an incredible one. But thank you, James. It was so fun talking to you. He's a hoot. The first time we had the interview scheduled, he had brain surgery last minute. So he was doing brain surgery. So he's like, oops, I cannot make it. I was
He
like,
performs surgery.
I was like, absolutely no problem.
Wow.
I'll see you when you're free.
Honestly.
Like, huh? That's crazy.
Wow. Our
So,
boy.
yeah, get the book. It's wonderful. Thank you all for listening. This is the Almost 30 podcast.
Yes. We have a second show, Morning Microdose, which is the daily dose of Almost 30. It's so amazing. It's ad-free just for you. 5 to 10 minutes of inspiration for every single day. So make sure to subscribe, rate, and review to that one. We also have 600 plus episodes. So if you're interested in this one, we have so many other topics that we talk about. You can search Manifestation Almost 30 to listen to more conversations on manifestation.
Awesome. All right, y'all. Enjoy this one, and we'll see you on the other side.
We'll see you guys soon. Love ya.
Every single morning, every single night, I take a tiny little capsule. It's like the size of a penny, and it's called BioSil. It is a collagen generator. It also protects the collagen that you already have. Y'all, I am just loving the results from this. So I don't know if you saw my IG story a few weeks back, but I am no longer doing Botox. The last round of Botox I had was before I was pregnant, so it was a while ago. But, I've just been getting the call. I've been getting the message intuitively to step away. And I love this product because it is truly making my skin look healthier and younger, and it is clinically proven to work. Not only for your skin, but also for your hair and nails. So it is a collagen generator, as I said, and also protects the collagen that you already have. Why is collagen important for your skin? Well, because it gives natural support and firmness to your face. It's just that elasticity. It makes you just look youthful, healthy. And I don't know if you know this, but starting at the age of 21, you start losing 1% of your collagen every year. So we got to be paying attention to this and doing something about it. This product, BioSil, is backed by science, over 25 years and $25 million in research, which is incredible. And it has been proven to increase skin elasticity by 89% and decreases the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles by 30%. Pretty crazy. All products contain the patented CHOSA complex. So that is the special sauce in there. But again, I take one in the morning, one before bed, super easy, super tiny. It's vegan. BioSil doesn't contain any collagen from animals, and it's GMO free. Oh, also it's safe for pregnant moms to be or when breastfeeding. Great. You can buy online or on BioSil's website, which is biosil.beauty. Or your local retailer. And for our listeners, you can get 30% off your first product order on BioSil's website with code ALMOST30. So again, that's the code for 30% off your first product order or subscription exclusively on biosil.beauty. Okay, confession. I have been wearing the same t-shirt for 3 days in a row now. Granted, somehow I did not get any stains on it and it's relatively clean, but y'all, I am obsessed with my cotton jersey t-shirt from Skims. It is a wardrobe staple for me. I actually just ordered a bunch of new colors. I literally reach for it every day because it fits so perfectly. It snatches me right at the waist. I wear it with jeans. I'll wear it with sweatpants. I'll wear it with like a cute little skirt. It's awesome. It's held its shape. Even though I've had it for a little bit and worn it a ton, it fits like a dream. I'm excited for you to try it. It's amazing. I also really love the boyfriend t-shirt. So I have this and sometimes I'll wear it with biker shorts. Sometimes I'll wear it with jeans and like tuck it in and like have a little slouchy moment. It's also so yummy and soft. So you literally feel like you're wearing your boyfriend's t-shirt. I'm really impressed by the quality of Skims products across the board. I have a bunch of their products from underwear to t-shirts and everything in between. And I gotta say, I'm impressed. So if you are someone that is needing some staples like t-shirts, basics, and foundations, Skims is my go-to, baby. Shop the Skims t-shirt shop at skims.com. Now available in sizes extra, extra small to 4X. If you haven't yet, be sure to let them know that we sent you. So basically, after you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. It means the world to us. Again, the t-shirt shop at skims.com. Head there now.
Well, I'm thrilled to be sitting down with you virtually, Dr. Doty. This is a conversation I've been looking forward to because I have been reading your new book, Mind Magic, pardon me, mind magic. I think into the magic shop, I have my magics all over the place. I'm like, let's get it right, girl.
Yes.
But why I'm excited to have this conversation is because I am someone, and I think a lot of people in our audience are people who have been introduced to the idea of manifestation years and years ago. And then I think social media kind of like took it and created somewhat of a tornado of ideas and concepts that people tried to adopt and didn't really understand on a, in this case, like neurological science level, what is actually happening. And I don't think, honestly, people thought there was a connection between your actual brain and manifestation. I think we have this concept that kind of lives above us. And we're like, well, if we just connect to source and if we just visualize consistently, et cetera. So I'm really excited to ground us in manifestation today and bring in a lot of the science because it is so fascinating. But first, I'm really curious at a high level, like how you got into manifestation, doing what you do, because it surprised me.
Well, as you know, every one of us has backstory. And that backstory, for most people, is very much related to either who they become or their interests, or unfortunately, what limits them from becoming what they could be. And my own backstory, if you will, is that I grew up in poverty. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother had had a stroke when I was a child and was partially paralyzed and had a seizure disorder. Ultimately became chronically depressed, attempted suicide. We were evicted from various residences. And of course, for a child in that circumstance, that's like a war zone. You're chronically being traumatized. You never know what's going to happen. It's chaos. And unfortunately, with that, for so many, you look at these different types of trauma, and they can add up to a situation where the likelihood of you succeeding, and we can talk about what success means, but the likelihood of you succeeding in life rapidly diminishes. And that's the basis for this work that has been done in pediatrics called adverse childhood experiences. So if you have poverty, if you have mental health issues, if you have abuse, if there is drug and alcohol abuse, all of these things start affecting whether you'll be successful in life. And sadly, for so many, they end up suffering from mental health issues or poverty or drug and alcohol abuse. So what was different for me? And I want to emphasize that to the listeners that it only takes one person to really change the life of another by recognizing their potential, by giving unconditional, non-judgmental love. And effectively, that's what happened to me. And as a child, when there would be challenges at home, I used to have an orange Stingray bike that I would get on and ride as fast and as far away as I could from the situation. And on one of those treks, I ended up at a strip mall in which there was a magic shop. And I walked in, and there was a woman at the counter, and I had an interest in magic, and I began querying her. And she said, listen, actually, I know nothing about magic. This is my son's store. I'm just minding the store while he does an errand. But we began a conversation. And the reason we began that conversation was because she was a person, and I'm sure you and your listeners have met people who have a radiance about them. This joyful smile and this embracing you with the sense that you were okay and you were safe. And it's a very unique ability to have that, and it's a gift. And what it did for me was created created a environment, if you will, of psychological safety, which made me feel comfortable to talk to this woman, because normally from my situation, I avoided conversations, especially about myself. And we began this conversation, and she actually queried me about typically questions I would never answer. And at the end of about 20 or 30 minutes, I would also say she was plying me with chocolate chip cookies, which was a big motivator.
That helps.
She said, I really like you. I'm here for another 6 weeks. If you show up, I think I could teach you something that could really help you. And this was before mindfulness was ever talked about or known, in fact, at least in the Western world, by very many. And it was also before there was this concept of neuroplasticity. But long story short, I did see her every day for 6 weeks, and we spent a couple hours together in the back room of this magic shop with the shag carpeting and this sort of card table we sat at. And nowadays, of course, somebody would listen to this and go, oh my God, a 12-year-old child in the back room with this older woman in a magic shop. But regardless, she taught me what I would say nowadays is recognized as a very standard mindfulness practice. What I didn't appreciate then was that based on the chaotic nature of my childhood, I was always tense because I never knew what was going to happen. And so as a result, you're always looking around, you're always wondering what's going to happen next. And so the first thing she taught me was what is now known as a body scan, but this concept of relaxing the body. Because if you're distracted by stimulation of your sympathetic nervous system, or this flight, fight, or freeze response, you cannot be present and attend. So that was the first thing she taught me. Now, to be frank with you, I was 12, and she was doing this stuff or telling me how to do this stuff, and I was saying to myself, this lady's crazy. But regardless, I continued to do it, and I was able to relax. So that was the first thing she taught me. And the other was what I used in my book, Into the Magic Shop, was this idea of taming the mind. And what I mean by that is that so often for so many, again, oftentimes because of the baggage you've carried from childhood, you have a narrative that goes on in your head that tells you you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not worthy. And I certainly had that. And I thought that that was truth. And the reality is it's not truth whatsoever. It is something that you created in your head, and it can be changed. And this is one of the things that I didn't realize, and that a lot of people don't realize, is you can do certain techniques that can change the wiring of your brain. And there's a term that's called what fires together wires together. And so this negative dialogue I had going on in my head, she taught me how to change it from negativity to positive self-affirmation. And I described it then as sort of changing the channel on the radio. And that allowed me to release myself or liberate myself, if you will, because when you repeatedly tell yourself negative thoughts, that becomes your reality. If you say, I can't, or it's not possible, that then becomes truth. And many people, unfortunately, listen to these narratives or translate statements they've heard from other people as negative narratives that they repeat to themselves. They accept what people tell them. And oftentimes, the people telling them, it's more saying a statement about them to make a negative comment than it has anything to do with you. And so once I was able to do that, then I could do something else. And what that was once I was able to be self-compassionate, I was then able to see the world through a different lens. And that was a lens that recognized that everyone is suffering. And then that allowed me to be receptive to, in some ways, the next step, which was manifesting your intention. And So she taught me this technique, which actually, very much aligns with some statements people have made about manifesting. But like most people, or a lot of people who attempt to manifest, how I perceived that ultimately was incorrect, and I paid a price for that. And what I mean by that is that I thought, and remember I was 12, so I had no real self-awareness or insight. I thought when it was manifesting things, I translated it into what I believed was the purpose of it. And it was to fulfill what I wanted. And there's a huge difference here, and I think I point that out quite directly in the book.
Yeah, I think that's one of the top frustrations in manifestation, which I want to go into. But first of all, I'm always in awe when angels like that come into our lives, and how fleeting it was, and how purposeful it was. I'm just like, yeah, to read about that story and to hear this story now, you telling it, I'm just like, it is remarkable. And it's hard for me to ever not believe in something greater than who we are as human beings, whether you call it God or source or universe, whatever you call it. It's so powerful.
Well, of course, we have a tendency to see things from a perspective of what we want to see.
Sure.
And this is actually some of the problems in society, is that it's easy for us to have confirmation bias for data that seemingly supports our narrative. And I'm not trying to be critical, I'm just pointing this out. Because the reality is there are innumerable other situations which do not, if you will, manifest positive things. You meet the devil, not the angel, if you want to put it that.
Yeah.
And so many people have had negative experiences, but of course, I'm all for positive narratives and optimism, but I also put in the context that, as I said, as in the first sentence of the book, the universe doesn't give a fuck about you. And this is not to dispel people's belief systems, but it's to understand that oftentimes when we look outside of ourselves, we are hoping there's some magical being that's going to come and save us, when the reality is we are the only ones who can save ourselves. And I think that's the important understanding. And I think the other lesson is, especially when you're younger, you think you know what you want. And many times that's based on what society, we believe, has told us what success is. And for many people, that's power, position, wealth. And somehow, if you get all of those things and focus every effort you have, that's going to lead to this perfect life of happiness. And nothing could be further from the truth. And this is not to negate having those things can be very positive for yourself and society. But that being said, if that is the only thing you focus on, one, you're going to be a very unhappy person. Two, you're going to have no purpose or meaning in your life. And three, it is counter to how we were designed, if you will, as human beings, in terms of what actions allow us to be our best selves and also best physiologically. And it relates also to longevity, which may seem strange.
Yeah, can you say more about that? So what is that aspect of our human selves that is desiring, like a larger desire than just the money or just the fame? Or can you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. So Unfortunately, I think that in a Western capitalist society, which I would suggest to you over the last few decades has gone from sort of reasonable capitalism to ruthless capitalism, which has been to the detriment of many, many people. But that being said, I think that the evolution of our species is such that, unlike others, our offspring, when they're born, do not swim away or run off into the forest or the jungle. We actually have a absolute requirement to care for them. Otherwise, they will die. We will not propagate our species. The reality then is to expend the time and resources. Frankly, you have to be rewarded. And this is a very deeply embedded genetic imperative. And the way we are rewarded is through the expression or release of various neurotransmitters. And one I'm sure you're familiar with is oxytocin, which is frequently quoted. But there are others, and they're used in different ways. But regardless, when you expend the time, the energy to care, you're rewarded. And that reward is release of oxytocin, which then stimulates your reward centers and pleasure centers in the brain, so you feel good when you care. But conversely, what also happens is when you care, your physiology works at its best. And this is the difference between people who want, which fundamentally is the message of The Secret, I want. And that is the huge mistake, I believe, that The Secret promotes, is that in many ways that is an insecure, fear-based desire. I want because I need this. I want because if I have X, it makes me whole. And that is a completely false narrative. Versus looking through the lens of, if I care for the other, if I'm of service, you shift from that, if you will, insecure fear mode or engagement of your sympathetic nervous system to engagement of your parasympathetic nervous system. When you engage that system, and you can do this also with mindfulness or breathing practices, it shifts you. And then you're much more open, you're much more generous, your physiology works its best because you are caring for others. You are being of service to a larger narrative, not a narrative that just is about you and what you need. And so I would suggest to you, and I think there's evidence that demonstrates this, that when you look at the world through that lens, the likelihood of you manifesting is much, much higher. And so this is when we talk about sort of the science behind this and some of the other understandings where it becomes a little bit more clear. All of us every second are trying to manifest something. But it's like, if you're driving a car and you don't have a map, you're just driving and you're hoping you're going to get there. Now, and that's with just as we are today. If you sort of use what, let's say, has been promoted in The Secret or other books about the law of attraction, and the law of attraction has been distorted in some ways, but or this prosperity gospel where, I'm meant to have this, and if I get this, everything's going to be great. It's like driving the car and you keep coming to dead ends, and it may feel good for a little while, but it's a dead end and you're not going any further. Where if you actually look at it through the lens of how can I be of service to others, then you see that through that lens, you are in a situation where you have unlimited possibilities. We can go in all directions, and we can see a brightness, everything good, and then you connect with that, and it's a much more positive feeling. And then when you have that type of a mental state, then that affects your physiology to the extent that it decreases actually the situation where you're prone to a lot of disease states. It actually increases your longevity. It promotes your immunity, all sorts of other stuff. So this is sort of when you change your mindset, how you change everything.
I'm curious, so if we are going to focus on serving others, does it have to relate to what you are trying to manifest, or is it just by proxy that it supports the manifestation?
No, I would suggest to you that your goal has to be about a larger desire than other related to yourself.
Right.
But that being said, it indirectly benefits you. When you do these other acts of service to others, you get all the other things, or to be frank with you, you realize you don't need all of these other things. And that's a huge, huge difference. Because as I said, the driver for many people to want these things is external affirmation. And if certainly as a 12-year-old where I made my list of what I wanted, they were all about me in some ways. And this was a huge mistake because I got all of those things and I was never more unhappy in my entire life. Even though friends of mine were saying, man, you've got everything. You've got a Porsche, you've got a Ferrari, you have a mansion overlooking the ocean, you have a penthouse, you have a villa in Florence, you're flying private jets. Man, what could be better than that? Yet, I had never felt more miserable in my entire life, even though I had, quote unquote, everything people dream of. Now, I have had people say, well, shit, I'd like to have that dream for a little while.
I mean, would be nice, but
yes,
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I guess, what was the tipping point for you where you were able to kind of shift that focus to serving others from that point?
Sure. And don't get me wrong, having those things, there's nothing inherently wrong,
Sure.
to have those things. So I'm not sort of saying, be a pauper and go around, wearing a loincloth and giving everything you have. But the difference, or when that happened, was here I had, gone to medical school, became a neurosurgeon, a professor at Stanford, a successful entrepreneur, and received certain accolades. From all of that, I kept thinking, well, if I just do this, then I'm going to feel whole. I'm not going to have that shame or insecurity. Yet none of it did anything at all for any of that. It's just there was now another mountain to climb. And so during the dot-com period, I ended up losing about $78 million. And you could argue, well, was that real or not real? Well, at that time, if you had certain holdings, you could get a loan against them. So I had borrowed $15 million, which was real money. And that is how I bought a penthouse and a villa and all these other things. And so in the dot-com thing, I was suddenly $3 million in the hole. And this was after ultimately I sold everything. Okay.
Wow.
And I tell people that in that situation, you get two really good friends. One was my banker who wanted his money. And one was my lawyer who I had to clean up all sorts of stuff because of that situation. And now the interesting thing was that I went through this period of reflection. I still had my house in Newport Beach, and I went to the house and I spent a lot of time actually walking around an empty house. But it recentered me in the sense that I went through all the lessons I had learned from this Ruth woman in this magic shop, and I realized that I had misunderstood. Now, it wasn't because I was a bad person. It was because I was 12 years old. And I had no self-awareness or experience, and I thought if I had those things, that would make me happy. So, and remember, I was a doctor, and it wasn't I was a bad guy. But me being a doctor was, I am Jim Doty. I'm a neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
I'm this great guy. And even though I help people, it was through that lens. And you could argue a very egotistical lens, I suppose, although I would prefer not to admit that. So once I started thinking about this, I changed my perspective from I'm a doctor and I am of service to people. And that's a completely different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And that change in attitude changed a lot of other things. And what I tell people is I went from rags to riches to rags, but what I gained ultimately was far worth more than any money. And what I mean by that was in the process of this, as I was going through all the legal stuff I had to do, I had made certain agreements to give money to charities, but I had no money. And when I was talking to my lawyer, I had filled out a bunch of paperwork to give money away, which I no longer had. But the only thing I did have left was stock in a company. And the attorney told me that the paperwork had actually not been filed, so I had no requirement to give anything away. And this was including a lot of stock I had in this private company that I had been the CEO of. And he said, so Jim, I would hold on to that if I were you. But I told him to go ahead and give it all away. And ultimately, I gave away $30 million to charity when I was $3 million in the hole. But when I say I went from rags to rags, the riches I obtained were many. My whole perception of my purpose and meaning in life changed. It was no longer about me. It was, what actions can I do to be of service to help others? And what came from that was I ended up donating to programs that help people around the world, blood banks, health clinics. I also started a center at Stanford that was oriented around understanding the neuroscience of empathy and compassion and altruism. And it turned out, again, through a strange fate, that the Dalai Lama became the founding benefactor, which then led me to become friends with him, which then led me to become chairman of the Dalai Lama Foundation, which then led me to become friends with Desmond Tutu, with Thich Nhat Hanh, with Sogyal Rinpoche, who wrote the book, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, as well, and they're all deceased now, unfortunately, but also friends with Amma, the hugging saint, Sadhguru, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, and a whole variety of others, Eckhart Tolle, Werner Erhard, founder of EST, Byron Katie. And all of these people became friends of mine, and I got close to them, and what an incredible gift. How many people get to be with these types of elevated beings? And the understanding I came to was that that is where everything is. These people live above the dogma of their religions, and they have a universal belief in the power of compassion, love, non-judgment, acceptance, and this connection of all of us as human beings. So when you get back to manifesting, looking through the lens of being of service, the reality that we're all connected, that's where the energy lies. And people oftentimes give their agency away, or the power that they have within themselves, to other people. And once you're able to reclaim that power, you can do amazing things, or if you will, manifest amazing things, but they have to be oriented for them to work best by a larger purpose. And that doesn't mean you don't get other things that you may want or think you want. Listen, I like Porsches and Ferraris. And I live in a very nice house. But that being said, my focus is on doing these other things. It's great that these other things have become available, but the other aspect of it is I don't need any of those other things. If they're there, great. If they're gone tomorrow, I'm perfectly happy. And that's another problem we have, is attachment and craving. And that then also limits our ability to manifest as well.
Yeah, the non-attachment piece has been so important for me, especially now. I'm in my mid 30s, but I think that became apparent to me as I kind of transitioned from my 20s to my 30s, where I was so attached to this idea of success that had been like planted a little seed when I was young, and to be kind of divorcing from that identity. I wanted to be an actress, and divorcing from that identity, whether it's fame or performing, whatever that is, was really confronting, very confronting, and almost felt like a mini death, to be honest. And so I'm actually curious what role identity plays in manifesting, because I feel like so many of us are walking around with what we think is our main or soul identity, and it is just serving as like a huge block to the life our soul truly desires. So what can you say about identity?
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. We have a tendency, again, based on our past or the baggage we carry, to self-identify, and also to want things that we think are incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
And therein lies the problem, is the want. And one of the biggest challenges is understanding the difference between what you want, which, as you point out, is often what is defined as success in modern society, to actually what you need. And what all of us need, actually, one is to be in a situation where we're cared for and loved. Mm-hmm. But just as important is we are in a situation we are not afraid of that, or of giving love, or being of service. And so you need to know the difference between what you want and what you need. And I think that is the real challenge. And if you then can translate into understanding the power we have based on what we were talking about earlier as far as our evolutionary constructs, is to care, to be of service, and recognize that is fulfilling your greatest potential. But the side effect of that is you create an energy around you that allows so many other things to happen for you. And yes, if you want to have a Porsche, there's nothing wrong with that, or live in a big house, as long as the underlying situation is always about a larger picture of how can I help others. And the reality is also not being attached to all of those other things that may come to you. And that's really the problem for so many people, is that, oh my God, if I lose my house, oh my God, if I lose that Porsche, oh my God, if I lose my job. Mm-hmm. And now on some level, those can be, concerns if, you have a very humble existence and those things are going away. But for many people, we're in the first world, and you're arguing about first world problems.
Yeah.
And I recognize that. So as I was saying earlier, if everything is taken away tomorrow, what I do know is I know who I am, mm-hmm. and I know what possibilities that I have to make occur, or through manifestation, if you will, and it's all okay. Because the problem is, when you get attached to a goal or an outcome or this constant craving, what happens to you? You're not present, because you're completely focused on something of which doesn't exist. And you forget that the most powerful thing, the greatest gift we have, is to be present. And being present on that journey is where everything is. The goal and the achievement is a secondary aspect. Yes. And this is why having gratitude for being able to be on that journey, or understanding that the attainment of these goals that we create are often transitory in terms of the feeling it gives us. As an example, nothing is more exhilarating for me, to get in a Porsche or Ferrari and drive really fast and go around corners and say how great it is. But that's transitory. I mean, it goes away immediately. And so people, though, want to hang on to that feeling they get of exhilaration or being alive by doing those things. And again, not necessarily anything wrong with that, but for most people, that's very transitory. Then you have to come back down to reality.
Right.
And the other side of it, though, that people forget is that when things don't work out for you, when you're down, many people sit there and go, oh, my life is over. This is horrible. This is going to last forever. But the reality is, those things are typically transitory as well. People sadly translate a transitory experience with the end of the world and then say life's not worth living.
Yeah.
But again, it's always transitory. And, unfortunately, or fortunately, I've talked to many individuals who've attempted suicide. And in essentially every instance, as soon as they do that act, they sit there and go, oh my God, I don't want this. And for obviously a large percentage, it's too late. But for those who do survive, they have this vibrancy and appreciation of what they have. And my point is that in those experiences where you're down, that's where you learn who you are. That's where you learn your greatest lessons. That's where you get resiliency from. And so I think those are very, very important things to realize, sort of the extremes, but in some ways, a recognition that the most important thing is the recognition of this and this concept of equanimity, where you have evenness of temperament. While you appreciate the great things, that's fine, but they're transitory. So you're living at a level where, okay, I'm enjoying it, but I'll be back to my baseline. And the same things if you're down. Now, believe me, it can be very hard sometimes because some of these things drag out. They're so painful. And I've been through that experience, believe me. But I've always believed at the end of the day, they will resolve. And hopefully I will have learned something, and they will give me tools or techniques to help me be stronger and be a better person.
Yeah, and it takes that experience to build that trust muscle, not only of yourself, but that it is transitory or temporary. So for anyone listening that feels like they're going through a really hard season for the first time, I can imagine that so much new can feel disorienting, overwhelming. And because you haven't navigated something like this before, you don't know if there's an end. So just want to note that, but also just telling you from Dr. Doty's experience and really every human being's experience, it does pass.
I've been taking Cymbiotika products for a couple years now, and I have to say I am just so obsessed. I usually put these products in people's bags when they're leaving my house after they've been visiting, because I'm like, you have to try them. I want you to be obsessed like I am. It is almost summertime, and I am just making sure my supplement game is on point. I am taking the Cymbiotika vitamin C. This will, if you didn't know, enhance your skin. It has biotin in it, but it will also boost your immune system. Ever get a summer cold? Not fun. So make sure you are getting your vitamin C. And I am also loving the magnesium L-threonate. This is an innovative form of magnesium, and it's able to cross the blood-brain barrier. It supports brain health, mood, immune system, and overall well-being by increasing your brain levels of magnesium. It also tastes good. So all of these liposomal deliveries that Cymbiotika has with their products, it's all liquid. It is so easy to take, and they are yummy. This one is a vanilla cream flavor. It's so good. Sometimes I'll add it to my matcha in the morning. Little quick tip. So Check out their line of products. Incredible. They also have home products. So they have a cleaning product line that I am absolutely loving. They have hand soap, they have all purpose spray and more. I was cleaning the other day and my husband's like, "What is that smell?" And I was like, "Symbiotica." Yep. Clean, non-toxic. Yep. He's like, "Wait, what?" It's true. It's true. They do it right. We've had Shervine, the founder, on many times. Check out those episodes. They're fascinating and some of our top listened episodes. All right. You can save up to 20% off site-wide with our code almost30. Just go to Symbiotica.com and use the code almost30 for 20% off site-wide. That's CYMBIOTIKA.com and use the code almost30 for 20% off site-wide. All right, honeys, summer is upon us, and I am just so excited to build a capsule wardrobe for myself that I'm going to have for many seasons to come, and it's from Jenni Kayne. I am so in love with this brand. This is a California brand through and through. Their styles are super effortless. They are classic. They have everyday basics. I just feel like I'm in the era of my life where I want to have clothes that I'm going to wear over and over and over again through many years to come. Ones that, like, I don't know, I'll pull out and be like, "Ooh, I haven't seen this cardigan in a while." And I'm going to pair it with the jeans that I always wear and love. And you know what I mean? So I want to share with you what I got for the upcoming summer season, baby. Okay, so first of all, I got the suede Hutton slide sandal from Jenni Kayne. These are just like a really nice classic sandal. I pair it with like a wide leg pant, or I actually did just pair it with the Parker long short from Jenni Kayne. These are like a longer short, a little frayed at the end. They fit so nicely. And then I also paired those shorts with the Easy tank from Jenni Kayne. I love this tank. I love this cut. It's like super flowy, easy, almost like a boyfriend cut, but I'll tuck it in, or sometimes I'll just like let it hang loose, dress it up, dress it down. So great. For the summer nights that are a little bit cooler, I will break out the Finley cardigan. So I love a cardi in summer, just in case, you know, you never know. And then, of course, we need a hat. We need a hat whether we go to the beach or just outside in general. So I have the crochet raffia sun hat. That is just so darling, so classic. Y'all check out Jenni Kayne. Not only do they have sweaters and tops and jackets, dresses, they have lounge, they have shoes, they have jewelry, they have accessories, and they have homeware, baby. It's Jenni Kayne Home. I think you're going to love it. So I'm a fan. I love the quality of these pieces. I'm going to have them for years and years and years. And what's great is Jenni Kayne pieces are really designed to be able to style the pieces together without a second thought. It's effortless. You are going to be so freaking cool. So this summer season, go to Jenni Kayne, check out the sundresses, check out the shorts, the tanks, the little sandals that I love. Just have a ball. Find your new uniform at JenniKayne.com. Our listeners get 15% off your first order when you use code almost30 at checkout. That's 15% off your first order at JenniKayne.com. The promo code is almost30. Let getting dressed be one less thing to worry about. Embrace your summer aesthetic with Jenni Kayne.
You mentioned presence, and I'm curious because when I am most present in my life, I am able to experience and see synchronicities in a way that I cannot when I am not present. And I can imagine that they're still happening when I'm not present, but I'm unable to see them and experience them. Can you explain synchronicities from the perspective of the brain and the neuroscience behind it?
Well, some of this happens where you're not aware of why it's happening. But what I would suggest is, and this gets back to manifesting in some ways. One, as I may have mentioned, all of us are manifesting. It's just how efficient we are at it and how the level to which you understand it. First of all, we experience our reality through all of our sensory organs. Right? And, but for all of us, 99.99% of that sensory information is ignored, at least on a conscious level. And most of it is because it goes to maintaining the homeostasis of all the mechanisms in our body to allow us to live. But the important aspect of this is that there's a percentage of that. And actually, we probably get about 100 bits of information a second, 100 million, but you only process 50 to 100.
Okay.
And so it's a very limited amount of information. But it's how to use that information. Now, many of us use it just to survive in this world and make decisions. But you can take that and utilizing some of the techniques that I talk about in the book, embed that. And you do that by something called value tagging. That intention, you put a value on it, which you then are able to embed into your subconscious. Now, I'll use the term conscious, subconscious, even though they're different somewhat interchangeably. But and the reason that's important is that when you're able to embed it, this gets back to the synchronicity thing. Okay. I'm sure you have been at a party where it's very loud, and then somebody will say your name, and you go like that. Even though it's at a lower level than everything else, your identity is so deeply embedded into who you are, you're always attuned to that. And in some ways, this is how it works. If there is something that you want to manifest, and I just actually had a recent situation where I was raising money for a project I was doing. And again, I was using many of the techniques that I talk about in the book. And I was sitting there having coffee, and then I heard somebody at the other table. And, you know, when you're in a coffee shop, people are talking. But I heard somebody talking about the exact thing that I was interested in.
Wow.
And I turned to them and I said hello. And I said, I heard you say that. And it led to this conversation where, we're going to meet and talk about potentially working together. Those are the synchronicities that come from this type of manifestation. And I use the analogy in the book about a bulldog or what's it called? A bloodhound. It could be a bulldog too, I think.
Could be a bulldog. Give him credit.
Yes. But, a bloodhound gets put on the scent, and it's always looking around and smelling around for the scent. And once it gets the scent, it heads off. And I think this is what happens when you are correctly manifesting.
Yeah.
The likelihood of synchronicities or other events, whatever you want to call it, dramatically increase, and by doing so, dramatically increase the likelihood of you manifesting your intention.
Yeah, it's such a fun, sometimes I do it just for fun, where I'm like, today I want to see a particular type of dog, like a really random, weird type of dog here in Brooklyn. And then I'll see 3. So it's like, there's a way in which you can practice this in a very light way as well, to kind of warm up that muscle and be like, okay, and not to put too much pressure on it as well. But I love that idea of value tagging, and the way you describe it in the book is super, super helpful. So many of your exercises are ones that you can do right in that moment, which I really appreciate. Sometimes I skip over exercises in a book because I'm like, oh, I'll get to that eventually. But you can drop in and do them right in that moment. I want to talk about intention, because to your point earlier of, wanting a Ferrari or wanting a big house, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But I think we trip ourselves up with our intentions because, at least for me, I'll speak from my experience, I'm like, okay, is that the ego? Is that what my soul really wants? Is this really meant for me? Is this just what I've always wanted since I was a kid and I haven't let it die? Like I get so in my head about the intention. Sure. So how can we set an intention that kind of sets us on the path to manifesting?
Well, I think that's an excellent point, and that's really a fundamental question. Getting back to what you said earlier about sort of the little game you were playing, it's funny, as a neurosurgeon, Obviously see a lot of patients with a variety of illnesses, and I can tell you innumerable times I've said, well, here's what's wrong with you. And the people say, I have never heard of that before. And of course, when you're fearful and anxious, also, in some ways, this may sound strange, it opens you up to information
Yeah.
that will get embedded because of that fear and anxiety. But I'll see him like 6 weeks or 2 months later and go, the most amazing thing happened. I've run into 5 people who had the same condition, right? And it's as you were talking about the dogs, and even, again, value tagging, embedding this, they embedded that, and now suddenly it's everywhere, right? And so I think that's the case. Now I've forgotten what your question was, so ask me again.
No, that was perfect. But intention, how we can, I guess, properly make an intention, or more intentionally make an intention.
Well, I think you have to be able to differentiate what you think you want from what you need. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people. And you mentioned ego. Especially in modern society, we all want to be accepted. And there's a narrative that, well, success equals happiness. Success means I have to live in a nice house, and I have to drive a certain type of car, and I have to have a certain job. So I'll be accepted that I'm okay. And again, this was one of the challenges I had, is that I had this view of success, and I worked very hard to achieve that success. But when I reached the peak of every one of those mountains, there was nothing there for me. And so I think you have to, and it gets back to craving and attachment. People get attached to these narratives of what they need, but there has to be a reflection on the why. Why am I doing this? And if the why is, I want people to like me, if the why is, well, if I have more money, people will think I'm important, there is the problem. Versus if the why is, if I'm able to accomplish this, then I will be able to help X, Y, and Z, or I will be able to make this contribution, which will have a much larger effect on those around me. And that needs to be your why, not why is because I want people to like me. And this is really a problem for many people. You ask high school students what they want to be, and a large percentage will say, I want to be an influencer. Now, I don't know what the fuck that is.
I love that. I love clip it. We're clipping that.
But what could be a worse thing in the sense that because so many of these people, they want to be an influencer because they want people to look up to them. Yet the whole narrative for so many of these people is they have this incredible emptiness, and they think that people looking up to them is going to fill that emptiness, and it will not do that. And conversely, the people who watch them have this emptiness, and they think if I could just be like them, I'll be okay. And it's a horrible circular paradox of unhappiness. And this is why you see a number of influencers commit suicide, because they still have to face themselves in the mirror. And the mirror says there's nothing here. And versus if you look in the mirror and you're surrounded by people who you've been of service to, who care for you, who love you, who appreciate you because your efforts have been to make their lives better, those around you better, that is really something that has value.
Yeah. I get emotional thinking about, the wants of the younger generation in terms of what will make them feel fulfilled and validated based on what they're seeing, especially online. So I'm thankful you said that, because that is profound. I don't know if it'll land with the right people who are ready to receive it. And I think on that note, ready to receive things. I feel like I have people in my life who, and me, I've experienced this, where I haven't been ready to receive messages, information, just insight about maybe what I'm going through. What's happening in the brain when we are not ready or willing to receive important insight to make us more open?
Well, to be able to live with yourself, you have to create a delusion about yourself. And what I mean by that is, and there's a very interesting book called Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me.
Love. Okay.
And but they interview a group of dictators or former dictators, and they talk to them, and these dictators will say stuff like, "Well, I never ordered these atrocities. These were done by other people. It had nothing to do with me. I never stole a penny. The fact that these people were imprisoned, I did not order that."
Wow.
And so they're creating a delusion about themselves, and we see this with some of our politicians. You might guess the main one, but where they create a sort of this narrative that justifies all of the bad things that they do. Now, there is a Buddhist saying that says, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right? I think that all of us, whether we like it or not, we all are deluded on some level, right? I mean, myself, yes, I would like to think that I have something to say that's worthwhile saying, but frankly, sometimes I'm full of shit. I mean, but
the awareness is everything.
Yes, and I think
I feel the same. Where I'm like, what did I just say? Anybody? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think having that ability, like as an example, I always want to be the dumbest person in the room because I learn things. I never want to be the smartest person, and to be honest with you, often I'm not. But this openness and understanding that you don't have all the answers, and you don't have to have all the answers, and this gets actually to the component of self-compassion, where you're okay, even if you don't have the answers.
Yeah.
You're still worthy of love. And this is where a lot of people get caught up, because all of us want to be loved, to be accepted, to be acknowledged. And unfortunately, many people have to create what they think is important in terms of a delusion to have people accept them and love them, versus being able to stand out and say, this is who I am, and that's it.
Yeah.
I don't have to make stuff up.
Yes.
And now, don't get me wrong, that's hard when you're a teenager.
Of course.
But it's so interesting to see how many actresses or actors will sit there and say, I was bullied and people made fun of me when I was a kid. And here they've reached this incredibly high level. And the point being that so many people are so self-judgmental and beat themselves up, when in fact they're perfectly fine. But the thing is, you just have to be able to sit and believe that you're perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And this may seem like a strange thing, and it's a hard thing. But I'm sure you've seen situations where there's this sort of quirky kid who some people make fun of, but he just doesn't give a shit.
Yes.
He does his thing, and he just refuses to participate, because you give these people power when you show fear or when you accept their narratives. They have no power. And this, in some ways, comes to the immense power we have within. We cannot necessarily change the external events, but we can change our perception.
Yeah.
External events are meaningless. We only give them power when we engage them. So I think that's a very important point, is to understand that, as we're talking about here, we have the ability, and the power that is within us is the ability to change our brains. And whether that is through a meditation practice to create calmness about you, or whether it's a manifestation practice to teach yourself the techniques to maximize the potential for you manifesting your intention. All of these things are available to each of us. We just have to understand that that's the reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the frustrating things that I see is this idea that manifestation is only for those who have done the work, who, fill in the blank, like where there's like a hierarchical experience of manifestation. And I appreciate you saying that because I think it allows people, hopefully in hearing that, to take back the power, like you mentioned. And I just wanted to say about not having the answers, that just hit me like very profoundly because I think I can be very self-critical, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can be very self-critical about what I don't know, what I haven't done, what I'm not good at yet, etc. And the most joyful times in my life and the most fulfilling times in my life have been when I've just sat in the seat of like who I really am and needed nothing beyond that and celebrated the parts of me that like were not perfect, were not fully developed and or whatever. It's just, that hit me in that moment. So hopefully it hit a lot of other people because I just think we live at a time when we're constantly seeing other people's lives. We're constantly being fed, let me coach you on this. Let me make you better in this. Let me be your life coach. I'm only 25 years old, but I know it all. Like all of that stuff.
That's so funny you said that. It always amuses me when you see somebody like that who's, I took a weekend course, I'm 22, and I want to be your life coach. And that's a whole different conversation, which would be fun to have. But this is where, in some ways, I'm sure you probably heard of the blue zones.
Yes.
Right. And these are these places in the world, and I think 5 have been defined by Bob Buettner, I think his name is. But again, this is how people lived hundreds of years ago. And the salient point here, and we can talk about brain networks too here at some point, although we're probably getting close to time, but that's okay. We can go a bit. But my point is, if you look at the blue zones in the world, or how we lived hundreds of years ago, these were in communities where you were born there and you died there. The point being that you were in a village, everybody knew you, and everybody accepted you, the good and the bad, and were there for you. And you did not have this feeling that you were inadequate. You just accepted yourself for who you were, and people still loved you. And you lived in these intergenerational families. When you were stressed, when you were anxious, where you were fearful, there was somebody there to hold you, to comfort you. And everybody talks about the Mediterranean diet, right? There's a gazillion Mediterranean diet cookbooks. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a primarily plant-based diet at all. There's nothing wrong with exercise. There's nothing wrong with quitting smoking. There's nothing wrong with moderate use of alcohol. But by far and away, the absolute most important aspect of that was human connection and depth of relationships. And that is what creates a situation where you're not stressed, you're not thinking horrible about yourself, and that allows you to live to be over 100. Those are the key components there. And in modern society, unfortunately, we don't have family or relatives near us. Many people don't. You haven't grown up in that type of environment, so you're terrified of being judged all the time. And this idea of being judged all the time creates this narrative that, well, if I have this or if I have that, I'll be okay. And the thing is, you don't need any of that. And this is where people give away their power and their self-agency by believing that they need some sort of external confirmation or affirmation, and then they'll be okay. You are okay as you are, with all the defects, with all the fuck-ups that you have done. You're still okay, and you're worthy of love, period.
Yeah.
And, this is if you can understand that, you are liberated. And it's a very, very powerful thing. And when you understand that, then you have all the power and you control everything at that point. You control what happens to you. You control your health. And to be frank with you, when you're able to be in that place, people look to you because it is so powerful that you're okay with yourself.
It's magnetic. It is.
Yes.
That's
No.
the radiance you were talking about.
Absolutely.
Did the woman in the magic shop, did you feel that radiance from her?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there are certain people who, as soon as you meet them, there's this energetic connection or power that they have because they're vibrant. And they look at you, and they don't look at you in the sense of criticizing you. They look at you as a fellow human being, as a person who has possibilities. They're encouraging. They're thankful they met you. They want to be around you, and they give you this feeling. And you know what people forget, and I talk about this in the book, is, we have an energy that we emit. And, the challenge is here between separating the woo-woo pseudoscience from the actual science. And a lot of people, I hate to say this, like to manipulate people by woo-woo. And while there are parts of truth in there, it's almost all woo-woo. And so, but we do have an energy that we emit. And when that energy is positivity, I talk about this connection between your brain and your heart. Your heart actually emanates energy that extends 5 or 6 feet beyond you, and it connects with people. And this is why, as an example, if you put a group of women living together for a period, their periods synchronize.
Oh, I know.
Yes. And so it's the same thing. When we are in the right environment, that energy can have a very, very positive effect. And we recognize then subconsciously that we are all connected, and that energy connects with all of us. And that is not woo-woo. That is science. Now, it may seem very strange science, but it's still science.
Yeah, that's profound. Is that heart coherence?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's a term HeartMath uses. And I love the people at HeartMath. But it's heart rate variability is one. But you do have this energy, and all of this stuff is, in the book, and there are references and things like that, which you can find. And to be honest with you, sometimes what happens is when I research these things, I spend a year doing this stuff, and then several months later, I can't remember squat. So,
You got to study your own book. I know. We just wrote one too, and I'm like, oh crap, I got to study the book I just wrote.
no. So that's why I say I hope they don't ask me some really hard questions.
No.
But but I do want to emphasize that we do have these brain networks. One's called the attention network. You have to get the attention. That's where these value tagging is important. It connects to the salience network. How powerful is that? And then that connects to our executive control function, which then guides us. So there are all these interrelated connections that are very, very important, and that allows us, if you will, to create this synchronicity that then occurs, which then leads to the possibilities of manifesting your intention. The other thing I would suggest too, though, is a lot of people are impatient. And you go, well, I practiced this for an hour, and this should have happened at 61 minutes. It doesn't work that way, because there are whole lots of reasons why things may or may not manifest. And frankly, at least in my own situation many times, it doesn't manifest in the time frame I would choose it to. And in fact, as an example, I don't know if I mentioned, but my first book it looks like is being made into a movie.
Wow.
Into the Magic Shop.
Cool.
And, it was a wonderful thing, and it sort of floated in the back of my mind. But, that book came out in 2016, and now where are we? We're 8 years later. But, John Hamm, the actor?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, he optioned the rights for it, and he's been very involved in that.
Wow.
And it looks
How
like it's
exciting.
really moving forward. And as a side benefit, he's become a friend of mine. And so you know, you never know. So it's these weird connections and things that seem to happen. But I wanted it to happen long before. And what's interesting is there were several little side roads where somebody come and go, well, I'd like to do this. And they weren't really credible or had the ability.
Sure.
So there are all these other little possibilities that are coming up. But again, you have to be patient. And, you know, people say God only helps those who help themselves. This is not effort free.
Yeah.
You have to put in the work. You know, it's like some people say to me, well, geez, you seem to connect with all these spiritual and religious leaders and, you know, but there's also a lot of deep work that has gone involved with creating the presence and the energy for those things to manifest.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the unsexy part of manifestation. Patience, and it takes work, you know?
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
rewarding. You know, I think anytime that I've released this attachment to time, the timing of things, and really allowed it to manifest in its own timing, and been patient, it's been that much more rewarding. And I also at the same time learned a deep, valuable lesson around timing.
Well, and I think it also emphasizes the point that, frankly, attachment and craving is what impedes manifestation.
Yes. Yes. We'll end on that note because it is simple and profound, and I need that. I need that in this moment. Even after manifesting some big things, I'm like, the human mind, or at least mine, tends to forget these really simple principles. So thank you so much for joining us. The book is Mind Magic. It is incredible. It's one that you can keep on your bedside table. And honestly, I've been like opening to a random page, which I tend to do with books. And I just see like what message or exercise or practice I am meant to engage in that day. And it's been really, really cool. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to our paths crossing in the future.
Me too. Me too. Have a
take care.
beautiful day, Dr. Doty. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you so much, Dr. James Doty. The book is Mind Magic. Thank you all for listening to Almost 30. So fun to have you here. We have new episodes every single week, so be sure you're subscribed. Subscribe to our other show, Morning Microdose, which is a 5-day-a-week clip show, best of the best of Almost 30. This is something that you can just flip on in the morning when you're getting ready for the day, just to plant a seed of inspiration, of curiosity, maybe some humor. We think you'll love it.
No, you're going to love it. Almost 30 podcast on TikTok and Instagram and also on YouTube. So we're now on YouTube doing our video thing. So come hang out and watch us there. I'm on Instagram at It's Krista.
And I'm at Lindsay Simsick.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.